M is for Mason.
G is for Graham.
B is for Bagshaw.
And this is the MGB Wrestling Podcast, Episode 1. Let's take a look at the match card for Episode 1 of the MGB Wrestling Podcast. In Match 1, we have Podcasts of the Week. In Match 2, we have our top 3 moments from Monday Night Raw. In Match 3, we have a quick round of Are You Smarter Than a 4th Grader? And in Match 4, we look at our top 3 moments from Smackdown. Match 5, we look at This Week in Wrestling and Nova Pro Wrestling. And in Match 6, we look at our top 3 moments from Impact Wrestling. And in our main event, we have the Tweet of the Week. My name is Graham Bagshaw, and my co-host and creator of this podcast is proof that wrestling fans live with their parents. My 10-year-old son, Mason. Now, I know all your homework is done, so tell us, Mason, how was school and how was your week this week in general?
It was pretty boring, because school's pretty boring. I had a test, and the only thing I kind of look forward to is recess and PE.
So pretty much like most 10-year-olds then.
Yeah.
And this was only a 4-day week as well, because we had President's Day this week as well, so that's kind of tough. Next week's obviously going to be even more difficult. So I know you were listening to a lot of podcasts this week, and last week we actually did a very special episode. Although this is episode 1, that was technically our special episode 1. We talked about Nova Pro Wrestling, which is the indie organization near where we live. But in general, our aim is to produce PG-rated material accessible to all WWE and Impact Wrestling fans. And when Mason came to me about 10 days ago asking, hey, we should do our own wrestling podcast, that was part of the motivation behind it. Right now, I have to listen to podcasts ahead of time. I listen for language, I listen for content, and then if they make the cut, Mason gets to listen to them. So he thought it'd be good if he could make a podcast where everybody could listen to without having to worry about language or content. So that's what we're going to aim to do on a weekly basis. Okay, so to begin with, we have Jerry the King Lawler versus Petey Williams in Match 1, which is scheduled for
1 fall.
In a Podcasts of the Week match. So I get to listen to podcasts first, and the ones that came out this week related to Jeff Jarrett being announced into the Hall of Fame. So the first one I listened to was one called Dinner with the King, which features Glenn Moore and Jerry the King Lawler himself. And actually yesterday, on Friday, I listened to Wrestling Perspectives podcast, which featured Dennis Farrell and Petey Williams. Now, I can't ask you to comment on these ones yet, Mason, because I know you haven't had a chance to listen to them. I'm going to put over Dinner with the King, and the reason I'm going to give Dinner with the King the advantage is Jerry Lawler actually got to talk to Jeff Jarrett on the podcast itself. Petey Williams is good friends with Uncle Pete, as he calls him, but he was just talking about him rather than to him. So if you got time, check them both out, but if you're going to go with one, I would suggest Dinner with the King. Now, Mason, you're obviously a little bit behind me, so which podcast did you really like this week then that you listened to?
I like the Brady Roberts BWP Wrestling Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It was about It was about a wrestler who started his first ever match at age 18, I think.
Oh wow! And I listened to this about 2-3 weeks ago, I think it was now. So I tend to have forgotten some of the details. So you're going to have to try and remind me. Was there a particular story that he told in that, perhaps, that sticks out for you?
My favorite one when Brady Roberts and a few of his other friends were driving in Salt Lake City, Utah, and he heard that Raw was on in LA, so he quickly drove to LA, and he snuck into Raw with all of him and his friends with his wrestling gear on, and then one of the wrestlers came and said, "Hey, you're not on the roster," and the security took him out. And he saw a wrestler he knew coming into the stadium. He's like, "Where are you going?" And then he said, "We got kicked out of Raw. We snuck in." He was like, "Whoa."
So anyway, that's a little insight. Check that one out at Real BW Podcast. And I got to say, that's certainly becoming one of my favorite podcasts. I know those guys release quite a lot of content. They tend to do nice short sections, 15 minutes sometimes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. which is great for that commute in the morning. So, yeah, certainly check out those guys. Very knowledgeable and certainly one of our favorite podcasts right now. Okay, in our second match today, scheduled for
1 fall,
we have Mason versus Graham in who had the best moments from Raw on February the 19th from Phoenix, Arizona. So, we don't always get to watch the match live. In fact, that rarely happens because Mason has school the next day, so we often watch it the next day. And sometimes if we don't have time, rather than watching the full match, on YouTube they always review the top 10 moments. So we thought we would talk about, before we watch that, what we thought our top 3 moments were. So Mason's going to tell you his top 3 moments, I'm going to tell you my top 3 moments, and then we'll see how they compare up with what WWE thought their top moments were as well. And to make it more of a wrestling match as well, we're also going to post a poll on Twitter, so you can actually vote for who had the best 3 moments. Was it Dad, or was it Son? And we're going to do this for 3 different events. We're going to do it for Raw, Smackdown, and if we need to, we've got to decide in 4, which will be Impact Wrestling as well. So we're going to see how that goes. And one thing I think we can say straight away is we definitely picked what we thought our best moments were, not what we thought their best moments were, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because we know some of the things. Well, they're obviously going to pick the main event match, is probably number 1, but we went for what we thought was more personal. All right, first of all, one thing we should say about this, and we picked a great week to do our first ever episode. This featured the Gauntlet match, which went on for over 2 hours. The previous record was a Bruno Sammartino versus Waldo Van Erich bout from over 50 years ago, which lasted just under an hour and a half, or so was reported on Deadspin.com. I picked that up yesterday. Mason, do you want to tell us about your top 3? Do you want to start off with let's do this in reverse order. Do you want to tell me what your third moment was then from Raw?
Starting at number 3 was when in the Gauntlet match, Finn Balor was already in the ring. Miz came out, the Miz Taraj came in the front, and Miz came out in the back. And obviously, Finn Balor always has to look at the Miz Taraj, and Miz attacks him from behind.
And I think the same thing. There was 2 people come out, so obviously that's his focus. He's assuming that Miz is going to follow on in a couple of seconds afterwards, and yeah, that didn't happen. So yeah, he got attacked, and once again, Miz doing his cheap shot, but it's certainly becoming one of my favorite heels. Although he's not supposed to be doing all that stuff, I think we both like that as well. All right, unless there's anything else you want to add, do you want to tell us your number 2?
Number 2 was Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy doing their creepy promo. And I loved when Matt Hardy, he said to Bray Wyatt, Bray Wyatt shall be deleted. and then the fans started yelling delete with their motion.
Yeah, and we were actually at a Maryland Championship Wrestling match. I think it was in January, and the fans were getting into that, even though there was no Matt Hardy route at all. And it's something I think the fans certainly like. The broken Matt Hardy, or the awoken Matt Hardy as he is right now, is certainly something that's catching on. I'm looking forward for Jeff Hardy coming back. I'll be interested to see if they decide to go with his brother Nero character. I know Impact's released the rights for that now, so they're allowed to do that if we want. So when he comes back from injury, I think I heard online June is when he comes back from that injury. I'm with you as well. I'm a big fan of Matt Hardy, and I really do like that laugh. And I'm not going to try and do it on microphone because I think we all know what that sounds like anyway. All right, number 1 moment then for you.
Number 1, when Strowman comes out, and the look on Miz's face is just, he's like, he literally wants to run back to his house and relive, like, when he was 6, so he doesn't have to deal with Strowman. So he quickly runs out the ring into hops over the barricade with Strowman after him, and Strowman catches him, throws him over the barricade into the floor. Ow, that's gotta hurt though. And then he throws him into the ring.
And I know the fans have got to love those moments because you don't quite know where they're going. You know, something's going to happen at some point, but that's got to be great fan interaction for things like that. All right, and I'm going to give you my top 3, and then we'll talk about where yours fall. Actually, let's talk about yours. None of yours actually came in the top 3 this time, but anyway, if it makes you feel any better, neither did mine, but I wasn't expecting that either. So my moments were... at number 3, I went with Braun Strowman kicking out from The Miz. Miz tried to pin him, which is just ridiculous in terms of size. On the count of 2, he literally just threw him off him. He went out of the ring, landed on the Miz Taraj, took the Miz Taraj out. They all fell to the floor. It was totally exaggerated, but it was hilarious, and I thought that was a really good moment for me.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add about that?
Yeah, it's just, they did that with Big Show, too. It's just... they're huge guys. They could probably do that in real life if they really were trying. And you could see Miz, he had his knees ready and his legs. And then as soon as he was like you could see he was ready. He had his arms down, ready to push up. And then he kicked out. He pushed his arms. You could see his arms go.
It was clearly choreographed. They knew it was coming, but it was great entertainment. All right, my number 2 moment was the Ronda Rousey promo. I'm very excited about Ronda Rousey coming. Obviously, a very big name. One of the big questions we've always been wondering is she going to actually be able to cope with the wrestling? Can she make that transformation from MMA to WWE? And that clip already I saw on YouTube last night has 1.2 million views, even though it was actually shown on Raw. They did show you, like I said, it showed you some wrestling moves. It did show you, obviously, she doesn't have enough yet, so she showed you some of the MMA moves as well. I'm excited. I'm waiting forward for Sunday because we now know she's actually going to do a contract signing. So we now do know that she's going to be on the Raw brand. And we still don't know what she's going to do at WrestleMania. Perhaps they're going to announce it on Sunday.
And I have a prediction. I'm thinking it's going to be Ronda Rousey. It's in a later match. Ronda Rousey versus Sonya Deville. They both have MMA backgrounds. So they both just joined they just both joined WWE within the last, I don't know.
Fairly recently. Yeah. I would agree. And I think that's something that's perhaps an angle that they could certainly play up. I still think for WrestleMania, I still think it's going to be a tag team match. I don't think that she's going to be quite ready for such a big match. So I think they'll pair up with somebody. I've certainly heard Triple H and Stephanie versus possibly her and Kurt Angle mentioned recently. And my number 1 moment was actually right at the start. It was the moment of silence for the victims of the school shootings in Florida. With me being a teacher, and obviously Mason being a student, and also my wife and his mother's also a teacher, something that was definitely on our minds all of this week. And like I said, none of my moments were in the top 10 either, so we didn't do too good, but we'll see what our listeners say, who managed to get the best moments. On the YouTube channel, they actually give the top 10 moments. We're just going to go straight to the top 5, mainly because Impact only goes to top 5 as well. So number 5 was the Drift Away by Elias to beat Seth Rollins in the Gauntlet match. Number 4 was the Coup de Grace by Finn Balor, obviously, on Elias to take him out. Number 3 was from earlier in the Gauntlet match. Rollins beat John Cena. That was the second match. Rollins had already beaten Roman Reigns. I really actually liked the AA that Rollins did on Cena in that match as well. And suggestions of a heel turn possibly as well in that match. The number 2 moment, they went for the tag team match with the women's division. There was a bank statement on Alexa Bliss, and then Absolution came in and started attacking people. But interestingly, at the end, Mickie James came in to rescue Alexa Bliss, so we'll have to see how that plays out on Sunday as well. And the number 1 moment was Strowman body slamming The Miz multiple times to win the Gauntlet, which I guess it was obvious that was going to be the number 1 because it's always the finishing move rather than things in the middle. But like I said, we went for what we thought was the most important ones. Okay, in our third match today, scheduled for...
1 fall!
Are you smarter than a 4th grader? So we obviously can't use the other grade. Next year, I don't know what we're going to do, Mason, for copyright reasons. But right now, as you're in 4th grade, this match features Mason versus you, the listener. So, the number 7 moment from Raw this week was actually Titus Worldwide beating The Bar. And one wrestler appeared with a name slightly shorter than normal, and he was simply announced as Apollo. Now, 60% is a pass in our school system where Mason goes to, so Mason, you're going to need 3 out of 5, okay? But to give you a chance, there's also an extra credit question as well. And Mason, here you go. Here's your first one then. So, I don't know if you noticed in the match, he was just introduced as Apollo, whereas normally he's known, of course, as...
Apollo Crews.
All right, so there's your first one. Now, also from the Gauntlet match, and we already mentioned him earlier, Elias.
Elias Sampson.
Okay, so 2 out of 2 so far, so you're doing good. Smackdown, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, featured Big E Langston, so you're already going to pass on this one. Number 4, in that same match we talked about with Apollo, was Cesaro. But what was Cesaro's full name? I gave you the nice ones at the start. And I have to admit, I'd forgotten this one. Actually, no, sorry, I knew this one. I'd forgotten the next one.
Cesaro.
Cesaro's his last name.
Oh.
So it's his first name. I don't think you know this one. All right, that's a fail on that one. Antonio Cesaro.
Oh.
Okay, and you've only been watching wrestling for 2 years, so I think he's always been Cesaro when we've watched. And I think this is why number 5 is going to be difficult for the same reason. Rusev. Every day's Rusev Day. What was Rusev's first name though?
Oh god.
I didn't know this, so I don't think you're going to. But
I'll
sometimes
stick with
you
the
read
pass.
things that I don't know. Are you gonna pass? All right. This one was Alexander Rusev.
Oh.
So you passed already, but to give you some extra credit, and I didn't know this one either. Neville. We haven't seen him for a while.
Neville?
Yeah, Neville's actually his last
first
name.
name?
No,
Oh.
Neville's his last name. I thought it was his first name. All right, so I don't feel so bad now about this one then either.
By any chance, is it Graham?
It's not Graham
Okay.
Neville, no, but being from England, I guess that's probably not a bad guess. Adrian Neville.
Oh.
I didn't know that one at all. So anyway, so you managed to get 3 out of 5. We won't count the extra credit question in this time to give you a chance. And then if our listeners want to post how well they did, I'm sure our listeners might have been listening for probably longer than we have, so they probably might have got 5 out of 5 for that one. But perhaps send us also any suggestions for other names. They was the only 5 I could find. I actually read these in an article, and I tried to think of a 6th name, and I sent out some quick emails, and nobody could give me any other names. So perhaps you might be able to send us a few other names for that one as well. Okay, in our 4th match, scheduled for
1-4.
we have Mason versus Graham again in Who Had the Best Moments from Smackdown on February the 20th from Phoenix, Arizona again, which is obviously where Raw was too. Do you want to start us off with your top 3 in reverse order? Now, before you do, I know we talked about this straight after, and you said, as soon as we watched that last match, you said, I could probably pick all 3 from that main event, Baron Corbin versus AJ Styles. And I know you didn't in the end, but it certainly was possible. I thought a really good SmackDown event before we even say anything else. Okay.
I thought number 3 was just the horrid look on the other team before the Bludgeon Brothers destroyed. If you looked at them, you could actually I bought into it so well. Looks like they were actually gonna beat them down.
No, they've been destroying everybody, so when you've got a local team like that, then you know you're in trouble. So I would agree with that one. I'm going to tell you as well, I also picked the Bludgeon Brothers. I picked them actually at number 2. I just like seeing them right now. I just want to see them against better opposition. They actually had it on on SmackDown as their 9th best moment, so that tells you how good of a show it was, or we just don't know what's going on in wrestling, I guess might be the other possibility. I know on this one I did want to comment on the fact that Eric Rowan, Luke Harper, really dominant right now as the Bludgeon Brothers.
Yeah.
We already talked about how dominant Braun Strowman was in the main match. And then you look at Bray Wyatt, the original founder of the Wyatt family, and he just has no credibility right now. He has a very low winning percentages. Everyone who left seems to have done good. Even Randy Orton was with him for a while as well. He seems to be doing quite well too.
Wasn't Daniel Bryan?
Daniel Bryan was for a while, and he's a GM. So leave the Wyatt family as quick as you can would be the best advice we can give you if that ever happens. All right, do you want to talk about moment number 2? I know we're going to go to the main event here.
Yeah. Main event time. Number 2, the multi-rotation of Baron Corbin when he did that deep 6. That was just, I don't know if he tried to make it 6 rotations. I didn't count it, just lost count.
And I actually watched this match twice. I watched the highlights in the morning, the short version, and then I watched it on the full version with you. And I was impressed that first time that I saw it. The only reason I didn't pick it was I thought there was better moments as well. But yeah, visually it just looked so good. It really caught your eye. I was like, whoa, that's some serious strength on that one. But yeah, I'll come to one of mine. I certainly had a Baron Corbin moment as well. But let's finish off what your number 1 move was.
Number 1, it was when Baron Corbin, he threw AJ Styles into the barricade. AJ Styles was just positioned perfectly, and so he could roll right off the barricade, jump over the announcer's table, and good job, Baron Corbin. He quickly turned away and he went straight into the ring. And then AJ Styles has been positioned for the Phenomenal Forearm, and it was picture perfect.
And I agree with you. When I saw it to begin with, I was like, my goodness, that just looked so nice, particularly in the slow motion. There was the full extension. And yeah, I still didn't pick it. But it was my consideration. It would have been my number 4 move, I think, if I'd have been allowed that. And you did we've finally got one in the top 3. That was listed as the number 3 moment. So you got 2 out of 3 in this time. And like I said, it's our own personal choices. My choices were, I went with number 3. I went with the Riot Squad. They won their match against Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and Naomi. And I'm going to be honest, I've never really cared for the Riot Squad too much, but I actually really liked this match. I really liked the Riot kick to end Becky Lynch, and yeah, I was just much more impressed. I don't think you were as impressed, and that's probably why you didn't mention it in your top 3.
No, I didn't like that match at all. I don't know what you saw that I didn't saw. I just didn't like that match.
And I heard somebody else on another podcast talk about yesterday that they just hate the Riot Squad as well. And I was on the same thing until that one match. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of the Riot Squad. I don't think they're going to win their next match, though. I think they're letting them win in the Smackdown matches, and then once it's pay-per-views, then I don't think they're going to let them win at those matches, but we'll see. Number 2, I already said. Oh, that was number 6 on their list, so I got one in the top 10. Number 2 was the Bludgeon Brothers, which we already talked about, which was number 9, and I nailed this one. The number 1 move was my number 1 move, but I feel kind of cheating on this one. It was the end of the match, which on the last match, which is always going to be probably the number 1 move. After the match, this was the match between Corbin and AJ. So AJ had already beaten Corbin, and then of course Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens come out to interfere, and they're putting the beat down on AJ. And then Corbin, who I just thought would have walked off because he'd lost and didn't care, suddenly got Sami Zayn, gave him an end of days. Picked up Kevin Owens, gave him an end of days, and just 2 big end of days back to back. And for me, that was a great way to finish SmackDown, and I gave that one my number 1, but not particularly surprising that was the number 1. So no real insight on my part, but it was something that I liked. But yeah, some great moves from AJ and Corbin in both those matches, and I'm looking forward for that 5-way match now. When we've got throw Dolph Ziggler into the mix as well, so that'll be an interesting one. All right, so. Let's look what they had as their top 5. They had number 5, Sami Zayn feigns interfering in the match and allows Kevin Owens to super kick Dolph Ziggler. That was right at the start of the match. He ran out like he was about to rush into the ring, and then he didn't, and it distracted him, and of course Kevin Owens won. Number 4, Zayn discusses post-match why he helped Kevin Owens. I don't think we expected this, did we?
No.
Last week.
No, I did not at all.
And he said that basically he realised how much opportunities he'd had being with Kevin Owens, and that when it came to that match in the future, that he'll take out everybody else and he'll lie down in the ring and he'll let Kevin Owens pin him. Well, we'll see how long that friendship lasts. Probably as long as lasted last time with Kevin Owens and Jericho, but we'll see what happens.
I think they just want to take the title away from AJ and Sami Zayn. He's already had plenty of title shots. I don't know what he's before he teamed up with Owens. I don't know what he's talking about.
He's had moments when he's been in and out. It's certainly not been as many chances as Kevin Owens has had, that's for sure. So perhaps it was just talking about that.
And I think that I'm just waiting for that Sami Zayn and Owens to break up like Jericho, and it's just.
All right, number 3 was the Phenomenal Forearm by AJ Styles to beat Baron Corbin. I think he picked a different Phenomenal Forearm, but we allowed that one anyway. There was a couple that both were really nice to look at. Number 2, Bobby Roode, glorious, with his glorious DDT, followed by a collapse by Jinder Mahal, and Randy Orton was the loser in that one. He got DDT, Bobby Roode got the collapse, and I wasn't that. It was just a promo. They were just talking in ring. I didn't think it was that good. And then number 1 was the one we already talked about, the 2 end of days to finish that offwards. So same thing. We'll put a poll up on Twitter, and you can tell us who had the best 3 moments. So were the best 3 moments Mason's, which was the Bludgeon Brothers, the Deep Six, and the Phenomenal Forearm, or my picks of the Riot Squad, the Bludgeon Brothers, and then the 2 end of days from Corbin to end that match.
Vote Mason.
I guess I better say vote Graham then as well. Okay, let's move on. In our 5th match scheduled for
1 fall,
we have a singles match featuring just news from Nova Pro Wrestling. Now, often if I find wrestling news, I'll have it, but with our special episode being Nova Pro Wrestling, if we find something on that, then we're certainly going to try and give them a plug. And I don't know if you realise, it's only 2 weeks actually until the next one, even though we went last week. So, all fans of Nova Pro Wrestling, definitely go check them out on Twitter at VA Wrestling. And they've actually started to announce, there's 2 events actually. There's the tryout show, which is called Sink or Swim. And then in the evening, they've got an all-female card, which is called Rip Her to Shreds. So the news this week that I saw was they've started to announce some of those tryouts, and they've announced several people who are going to appear in it. I took a picture, so I'm going to show Mason right now. My favourite one so far is somebody called the Grimy Scots. They're dressed in what looks like kilts, although to me it looks more like tablecloths. Any comment, Mason?
It's weird that they're called the Grimy Scots, and there's an American flag in the background.
I think that's just the venue where they're at.
I know, but still, they should have. I don't know.
And it does say they're actually from Maryland as well. So unless there's a Scotland, Maryland that I don't know about, then but anyway, so that's something to look forward to. And also they did announce that at the Sink or Swim tryouts, the main event is actually going to be Logan Easton Lareau versus Safety First Tim Donst. I actually just changed your profile picture on the MGB Twitter feed to a picture you had with Tim Donst. So if we're big Tim Donst fans, so I thought that was certainly worth mentioning as well. Tickets are available. I think last time I looked, 2/3 of the front row were sold out, so make sure you get those tickets. Okay, let's move on. So in our 6th match scheduled for
1-4,
we have Mason versus Graham again. What a surprise! And who had the best moments from Impact Wrestling from February the 22nd. Okay, you want to talk about your top 3 for this one then, Mason?
Top 3. Number 3 was Brian Cage beats Hunter Law with his drill claw.
Brian the Machine Cage.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think it's totally absurd that they're just giving him nobodies. Brian Cage, they're giving him nobodies. Like
Bludgeon Brothers.
yeah. And Braun Strowman, he was like one person, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 6, and Bludgeon Brothers like that.
And he actually was even more dominant this week. Last week was 1:10, 1 minute 10 seconds, and he was throwing that guy around the ring like the proverbial rag doll. And this week, Hunter, it was 1 minute and 7 seconds. So certainly there's more to come from Brian Cage, but certainly a dominant Impact. He definitely looks like he could do that, though, even if you put him against somebody who has a probably higher caliber. But I'll certainly be interested to see how that one develops.
Versus Tyrus.
All right, do you want to talk about your number 2 moment?
Number 2 one was Grandma Jenny, Joseph Parks.
Grandma Jenny Park.
Interrupts Congo Kong and Jimmy Jacobs, who we actually met at AIW, and promo saying they want Abyss, and Grandma Jenny said Abyss won't be coming, and she slapped Jimmy Jacobs.
She also prodded him in the chest a few times, which probably wasn't the most sensible thing, but anyway.
And so Congo Kong was about to beat down Grandma Jenny, and Joseph Parks came to the rescue, and he took the praise for her.
And your number 1 moment?
Number 1 was when Matt Sydal, beats Petey Williams by reversing the Canadian Destroyer and pinned him.
And we might be there's only one person who's kicked out of the Canadian Destroyer. Eli Drake. And we're probably slightly biased on this one. One of our other podcasts that we really like to listen to is the Wrestling Perspectives podcast with Dennis Farrell and Petey Williams. And actually, Mason, you got a shout out. I know you haven't listened to it yet. Dennis Farrell reached out to me on Twitter, asked for your name, asked for the name of the podcast. And they did give you a little mention, 2 or 3 mentions. They've talked, I think Dennis is trying to get Petey to come on our show. I'm not sure we're quite ready for that yet, but I'm hoping at some point in the future that would be something we could arrange. That would be really cool. But certainly even before we listened to that podcast, we were big fans of for me, Canadian Destroyer. Once I saw that, I was like, whoa. I remember almost wanting to wake you up because I was like, that just looks so cool. Because I don't think WWE allows that move. So
no.
I think that was something that was really cool.
Yeah, that airborne move that Sydal does. The Canadian Destroyer they banned. There was one more movie.
And I think Impact's, I think it's rated 14, so I guess technically you're not supposed to watch it for a few more years, but I think we're okay with that. And I think WWE is just PG now, so they've definitely changed a few things on that. Now, I should have said, the one that you picked at number 3, Brian Cage, that actually turned out to be the Impact's 4th best moment, sorry. Grandma Jenny was also in there. Grandma Jenny was the 5th best moment. And Petey Williams wasn't in at all, but I think it's one that we personally just like. So, all right. So my top 3, and I agreed with 2 of yours, and then we switched the order though. I went with number 3 as Petey Williams. Number 2, and I'm actually wearing. I didn't think of this at the time. I just put my shirt. I went to the gym. I showered. I just grabbed a shirt, put it on my EC3 shirt, and then we watched the Impact Wrestling last night, and sure enough, EC3 was on. And that was my second moment. The move, the Super TK3. Against Johnny Impact, and in that same match, Johnny Impact also kicked out of the 1%. Any problem with I couldn't go any higher than 2. They were great moves, but Johnny Impact, he's going to kick out. Everybody knows EC3 is going to NXT, so that kind of devalued it a little bit. And you talked about us going to see AIW, which was in December. you actually got your picture with EC3, and I'm going to try and post that one. Sid Vicious was supposed to turn up for the meet and greet. He didn't turn up. They got the jacket for EC3. They got the wig. We got signed. He signed his poster. I think it was like, "I'm not Sid. Sorry, I'm not Sid," and things like that. And to be honest, I thought it was a far better moment than if Sid had been there.
Yeah, I still got to meet a WWE wrestler, Hornswoggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really he's the tag team champion. We saw him get that. It wasn't supposed to be like that, I think. And
I think Sid was supposed to be in that match instead.
Yeah, that other guy, that was nice. I got a picture with his tag team partner, and Hornswoggle jumped in.
Yeah. So I got a picture with the tag team. And on YouTube, we'll make sure we post those pictures as well, so you can see those. And we got a few. We started to collect autographs. When we went to our first Nova Pro meeting, we saw Sanjay Dutt, and great guy, really nice. I know we were a little intimidated at our first big wrestler who we knew from the TV. Really nice guy, signed your autograph, took your picture, and then we've started trying to get at least one autograph from everyone. I think we got 5 from the AIW one. It was getting a little crazy. My fourth moment, having just mentioned Sanjay Dutt, I was so close to including Sanjay Dutt on commentary. He actually got injured at the 11th Dimension Nova Pro event in November. In a match against Jonathan Gresham. So we're really hoping, I know he's had surgery, I think he said it's the first time he's been injured in like 17 years. So I'm hoping that he can do his commentary right now, but I know we're certainly both hoping that he can come back and wrestle at Nova Pro, because we're both big fans of Sanjay Dutt, that's for sure. Okay, and my number 1, I actually went with Brian Cage, which we already talked about, and that was the number 4 position. Super TK3 actually wasn't listed in the top 5, so let's have a look what the actual top 5 was. Number 5 was Joseph Parks, which we already talked about, saving Grandma Jenny from Jimmy Jacobs. Number 4 was that Brian Cage Drill Claw. Number 3, Cult of Lee beat LAX in a tag team match. Not a big fan of either of those two right now.
He pulled his tights so you could see all of his underwear.
It was a cheating move. I'm not a big fan of either of those two, so I didn't too care about them too much. Number 2, EC3 was mentioned, but not that moment. Of course, it's the end of the match. Tyrus was with him outside, and EC3 decided to give him a push in the chest, which Tyrus gave him a bigger push back, and then just left him to himself. And then number 1, and I couldn't have picked this one. Having said, it's going to be the big match, and it's going to be the highlight. Austin Aries faces off with Johnny Impact in a promo for their main event, for their pay-per-view event in 2 weeks' time. I could not have cared less. If I'd have done 10 things for this one, I don't think I would have had Aries talking to Johnny Impact at all.
And the thing about it, I like the sportsmanship and all that. Former WWE, both former WWE wrestlers. So is EC3, and yeah, I like the sportsmanship. I just don't know what was so good about it.
It's not the number 1 moment, and that's the thing. I'm going to say, a lot of people knock Impact Wrestling. I thought it's actually been a lot better the last few weeks. I still really enjoy watching it, but if you're promoting that as your number 1 moment, I don't think you're going to be getting as many fans as you could. They're obviously saving events, sure, for their pay-per-view coming up. All right, Mason, we're almost in the home stretch. Our final match scheduled for
1 fall.
All right, we have the tweet of the week. Now, I only thought about this actually at the last minute, but I do see things on Twitter, and I certainly want to talk about them as well. So I went with this one, particularly if it mentions somebody who we know from Nova Pro Wrestling. So this is from Friday night. As this is a PG podcast, I'm going to remove 1 word from it, so it's suitable for your ears, Mason. This is from John Thorne, and this is at John Thorne AIW. And it says that Tom Lawler clotheslined Dominic Guarini so hard he broke his own arm tonight. What a legend. Comments, Mason?
How do you break your arm doing a clothesline?
I have no idea, and it is AIW wrestling, so I think that might be one we want to see if we can find either a clip on YouTube, or we might have to rent a video for that one. And Tom Lawler, I checked on his Twitter feed because I wanted to see some information. All it said was somebody posted that he'd gone to hospital, and basically he said, I hope I get well soon, or pretty much, it was pretty innocuous, to be honest.
Question, is he related to the King, Jerry the King Lawler?
Oh, I didn't even notice that. It's a different spelling, actually. It says Lawlor. He also has, I believe he has the MME background. I talked to you just about this before. I thought we'd seen him somewhere before. I thought we'd actually seen him at AIW as well. I didn't get a chance to look at it this morning or not, so I don't know. It might have just been something I watched on Powerbomb TV, but I certainly remember Tom Lawler as well. So, all right, and that was our final match. We do have to thank Kevin MacLeod. We have our theme music up, hopefully, and if we don't, then I'm going to have to edit this bit out. We found a song called Zigzag, which we chose. I think the song actually chose us. Zigzag, of course, the finishing move of
Dolph Ziggler.
Now, when I was trying to find a song, there was like 1,000 songs, and they're all listed alphabetical. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to click through all of these? So I scrolled down to W to see if there was something that was called wrestling or something that we could possibly use. And sure enough, at the end, Z or Z if you prefer, seeing Z as I'm English, we saw this Zigzag, and I liked it. I was like, I kind of like that. I think that works. And I was like, I'll play it at Mason. See what I played him 3, and I put the one that I really liked in there as well. And you said you actually liked it. I didn't tell you it was called Zigzag. So we got to thank Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com for that. And it's licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. And you can find that at www.creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0/. We'll also have that posted on the YouTube page as well, so we don't have to pay any money for that one. That was a royalty-free one, so we really appreciate Kevin for doing that one for us. All right, that's the end of our episode, so it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from Mason, and remember, vote Mason.
Oh, yeah, definitely vote on Twitter so we know who is the best, I guess, at reviewing those matches, right?
And we'll have a belt to wear for next podcast.
No, we talked about that beforehand, that we got to decide. We should be I know some wrestling podcasts have like a forfeit system, depending on who wins or who loses. I think we're not going to go with forfeits, but I think we will certainly try and customize some sort of belt, and we'll have something we can wear, and then we can take a picture and we can post that on Twitter for the winner. I think that's a great idea. I think we'll do that. All right, that's definitely the end of this podcast now. Okay, we'll talk to you next week, hopefully on Saturday or Sunday.